Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're doing well. Today I am at North Orange Baptist Church in Orange, Texas, and I've been working with these guys for the past few months on just some AVL integration pieces, but I want to bring you along on part of this. One of the things we're doing today is taking this Alesis Strike Pro drum set behind me that they've been using for a while now and converting it from a stereo input into the house system to individual inputs. That is something that you're able to do with these upper tier electronic drum kits, and so we're going to do that today. But before we get to the patching piece, I want to give you just a before reference so you can hear what they sound like just going stereo left and right into the house with minimal adjustment on the actual controller itself. So check that out. So as you can tell, that is not a very solid drum sound. There are some good sounds in there, but when you begin pumping that through the house and you only have control over 2 channels, there's only so much you can do inside the controller itself to really achieve those deep, dark, and driven drum sounds that you're looking for in a worship drum set. So I'm going to dive in, and the first thing I'm going to do is get all of this unhooked and get some some cable management done. Because it needs to be done pretty bad. And then I'm actually going to be patching this snake right here through. Now, if you're going to do this, you do need to make sure that the snake you grab is 1/4 inch to XLR input. That way, when you come out of the back of the controller, which is 1/4 inch, you go down into your stage box or your analog snake, wherever you're going, which will be XLR input. So I'm going to get on this, and you guys just sit tight right here. Okay, so as I get this thing apart, here's what I'm finding out. This wiring harness is absolute overkill. Good and bad, right? So they absolutely give you enough length to get where you need to go in most situations, but in others, not so much. And so what I was considering doing was moving the brain to the other side because the drummer enters from this side, and right now their Christmas decorations and things like that kind of make it a little difficult. Doesn't matter which side you try to get in. But it's looking like for the hi-hat, I might not actually have enough links to get all the way across if I do that. So I'm going to try a few different things, and I'll let you know what I come up with. But the other thing I actually do really like about this kit is on each of the drums specifically, there's a tone knob. And so it changes how the articulation comes across, and it changes the depth of the drum and things of that nature, no matter which model you choose on the brain. Now, the reason I like this so much is even when we were running this in stereo, I could still go in and get a little more out of the drums and make the articulation more even across them and sound a little more natural. Because, again, they're electronics, so it doesn't matter what kind of stick you use, what kind of tip you use, that's not changing the sound and the tone of your articulation and the resonance in the drum. So those tone knobs allow you to adjust a little bit of that. Now, the downside that we ran into is, like I said, you only have left and right out to go to the system. And so it makes it really difficult when you have, like you heard in the preview earlier, maybe too much articulation on the kick drum, and maybe the resonance on the snare is too much, but you can't do anything about it outside of the little bit of control you have in the brain. So I'm going to jump back in here, reposition this kit a little bit. I think I'm actually going to drop a tom off of this and maybe even a cymbal, because there's a couple of things they had set up that are like set up to be dual zone, but that specific cymbal isn't dual zone. So yeah, let me dive back in here and dig a little more, and I'll get back to you on that. pro tip, the racks that come with these electronic kits, a lot of the time have plastic joints on them. So I highly suggest heavier drums like the lower tom, things like that, move it to a snare stand. It's going to be way more stable. This kit, for example, has a couple of different screws that have been stripped on the rack joint or don't have the nut on the other side, like a lost piece. And so it makes it want to lean when you put a lot of weight on it, especially like the way I have this floor tom here, so that it's up a little bit and you don't have to sit on the floor to play it. I've got it elevated on the post. So that means that we're raising the drum and the weight so it pulls a little harder. It's just physics. But it makes this rack want to lean. So I've gone through and tightened the whole rack, but it's still, it's still not as stable as putting it on something like a snare stand. So that's what I would suggest if you're going to do that. All right, so I'm now sitting behind the kit, and I want to walk you through some of the adjustments I've made before I put the wiring harness back on. The first thing is we got rid of a tom. So I got rid of the little 8-inch that was up here, and now we're going 10, 12, 14. A lot of worship stuff these days, that's what you get a lot of the time. If you do have a bigger tom down on the bottom, it's usually, something special like a big deep drop or something like that, and they're just not doing any of that here. Plus, this is a younger player. She's only been playing kit for, I think, a year at this point. And so the less stuff to think about, the better when you're learning. Plus, if you can't get what you need out of a kick, a snare, and 3 toms, I don't know what to tell you. But that said, so we dropped it down to 3 toms, snare, kick, and then I brought everything just a little bit closer into me. So that way my travel time is less. The other big adjustment I made is we raised the seat significantly. I'm a big fan of Ben Caesar. Ben is Brad Paisley's drummer, both in studio and on the road. And one of his techniques that he emphasizes a lot is getting up above your drums. It means you have to move less, you have to reach less, your accuracy is better, you can see everything well, and then you don't wind up dragging a stick across the side of a drum or something as you're moving to make a stroke elsewhere. So that's some of the adjustments we've made. Other than that, I also dropped a cymbal because, like I said earlier, the way this wiring harness is set up, they had expanded that to be a dual zone cymbal, and it's not a dual zone pad. So don't want that in the way, but she's still got 2 crashes plus a ride and her hi-hat over here. I also leveled off the 2 crash cymbals a little bit more. They were really wonky. And I brought that ride cymbal in where it's nice and comfortable and follows the movement of the kit really well. So it is time to get the wiring harness back on, and then we will patch this thing up. Okay, so that is all we're going to do for today. I've got the wiring harness reconnected completely. Ran into some issues with length, so know this: if you do move the brain from the left side of the kit to the right side of the kit, at least for the snare and both hi-hats, you'll need to run stereo or mono extensions depending on which cable you're trying to connect to at the moment. I had to run 2 stereo and a mono. One of each of those was for the hi-hat, the other stereo was for the snare. Other than that, it was pretty straightforward. I went ahead and cabled everything where it comes down behind the bar so that the audience doesn't see any of the mess, and tried to make it as neat as possible. Tomorrow when I come back, I'm going to go ahead and install the snake that's going to take us down to the stage box, and we're going to zip strip up some other things and just make this a little bit neater, a little bit cleaner. But yeah, that's today. I will be back tomorrow, which for me will be several hours, but for you guys it will be about like that. So good morning. Welcome to day 2 at North Orange Baptist in Orange, Texas. We are working through this Alesis Strike Pro drum kit you see behind me here. And yesterday we completely tore it apart. We repositioned the drums, we cleaned up the rack, we put the wiring harness back on, recabled it and made it all clean, and we added some headphone extenders to get the length we needed for certain drums, just to keep it nice and clean. They're using an Allen & Heath system here. They have an SQ7 up there at broadcast and a GX4816 racked up underneath the stage. What that means for us, so unfortunately, they do have some drop boxes here on the stage, but there's not enough inputs in one or the other to get everything down into the stage box the way we want to. So what we're actually going to do, that snake I showed you yesterday, is actually going to drop down through this air return right here. There's actually no HVAC down there, so we're not like disrupting anything or any airflow. All those are for is just to let the equipment that's down there breathe. So we're going to pull one of those grates, we're going to drop the snake through it. I'll have the maintenance guy here cut that grate to fit the snake nice and clean. What that's going to do is keep me from having to run like 40 or so feet of cable to go around through a door down the stairs, and that's just not clean and it's not safe. I'll only have to run like 15 feet from the brain to a direct input on the stage box, which is always preferred if you can do that. So before we dive in, I'm going to take you back here and show you the back of the brain and kind of talk through the outputs and what you're actually getting when you set it up like this. Okay, so here is the back of the controller or the brain for the Alesis Strike system. And you'll notice here that you get individual kick, snare, hat, and ride outputs. However, our toms and our crashes are going to be a left and right out. Now, if you're using just 2 toms, you could get away with running one left and one right in the brain and coming out of the left and right output no problem, and getting individual control. But in this case, they have specifically requested to keep 3 toms. So that being the case, we're going to have to get a little bit of a blend going, but it should be fine. However, to our benefit, with the crash being a left and right out, we will just in the brain assign the left crash and right crash appropriately, and then we get individual control over shaping those. And of course, we have that individual ride output, so that shouldn't be an issue either. All right, let's jump in and get this thing snaked down to the stage box. All right, so I am now under the stage, and honestly, I don't know about this. I'm not sure why this was done this way, but there is a rack here with all their amps in it that is permanently bolted to the ground, and then the rack with their stage box is behind it. There's no other door, no other point of entry or anything, so I'm going to have to squeeze back through this hole here and get that all patched in. But I just wanted to show you where we drop down at. So that right there is the grate that we just cut, and that thicker black cable there is the snake. So I'm gonna see if I can figure out a way to fit my not so small self back there. All right, well, that was interesting. So I've got that patched. There is a plan in the future to come in and at least straighten up and neaten up some of this cable so that it's less of a mess and we can really see what's going where underneath there, because it's pretty hard to tell. And some of the little miniature snakes that are running from the stage drops to the stage box back here, the labels are the same on them. So like maybe 21, 22, 23, and 24 on stage are 1, 2, 3, 4 on the micro snake, and then 25, 26, 27, 28 are also 1, 2, 3, 4 on the micro snake. Now, of course, they go into their own inputs, but it would just be really nice to be able to have all that bundled together and labeled appropriately. So there is a plan to come back and do that in the future. But as for now, I got all the cabling secured down and nice and neat. We zipped up the snake and the power to the post under the brain so that if somebody trips on it or something like that, or somebody tries to make an adjustment, it doesn't rip everything out of the floor or out of the grate or anything like that. So to save myself a trip upstairs, because their front of house, their production is up in the loft, I'm actually going to use my computer here, and we're going to use the SQ Mixpad app to patch everything through. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go in here and clear out the old patching and make sure that all that's clean. And then I'm just going to go through here and from the kick drum down, which I need to rename, and I will at some point, I'm just going to patch it 1-to-1 because that's what I did from the brain to the stage box. So the first 8 channels, essentially. Now, what that means is that on the stage box, I'm telling it under the S-Link tab that whatever goes into channel 1 on the stage box is what I want to be channel 1 on the board upstairs. All right, now that we've done that, in the SQ Mixpad app, it's under processing. We're going to go to the individual channel and click the name up here. We're just going to rename this kick. And we're going to do the same thing on the next one, and it's going to be snare. And then hi-hat's already named. This is actually going to be ride, because we're naming these based off what's on the back of the brain. This will be tom left. This will be tom right. And then, of course, symbol left and right are already there because we knew that was coming. All right, now, if you're like myself and you're going to not use everything that's included with the kit here, there's one thing you do need to make sure you do prior to going ahead and programming everything, and that is on the back here, we want to make sure that the things we're not using, we unplug. And the reason for that is throughout the rack, like you can see one there, we have certain triggers that aren't going to be used, and so we don't want the open cable on the other end to touch something and get triggered. So in this case, we are not using Crash 3, and we are also not using Tom 4. Houston, we have a problem. So as I'm sitting here for the last hour programming the brain, the controller, I come across this issue as I'm programming the crash symbol. On the tail end of it, it is triggering the snare very softly for some reason. And then I move on to the hi-hat, and I have a similar issue. And lo and behold, I've traced it to these little extenders we put in. Unfortunately, for some reason, even though this is TRS and this is TRS, it is not going in all the way. I even tried another one of the same style just to check, and another plug, connector, male connector, just to make sure, and sure enough, it's not going in all the way, which means there's a short essentially in there somewhere. Unfortunately, I don't have any more headphone extenders that fit appropriately. So what I'm going to have to do is reconfigure the wiring harness and just use the longer cables where they're appropriate, and just use it like a snake, 1-to-1, 2-to-2, 3-to-3 kind of situation. That way I can get direct connections around as far as I need them to go. It's not a big deal. It's just time consuming. So if you guys want to hang out, I'm going to jump in and do this real quick, and I will be right back. All right, well, that was like 30 seconds for you guys, but that was close to an hour, I guess, for me. Yeah, right at about an hour. So completely recabled. I took every headphone extender that we put in out. The one thing that is not like ideal the way I would want it to be is the hi-hat control line is a mono line. and unfortunately, the mono extender that I had was not working correctly. I don't know if there was a short in it or what. So I went ahead and used a TRS cable that was in the wiring harness in the snake to go from the hi-hat control module to the input on the brain, and it seems to be working fine. So here's what I've done, just so if you run into this, you kind of get an idea of what you should do. So for example, the hi-hat is now using like Tom 3 cable. Crash 1 is now using Crash 3 cable, so on and so forth. The snare is using one of the Crash cables. Both toms are using a Crash cable, things like that. Now, as long as you find out where it's plugged in, so like snare is using Crash whatever 3, and I come over here and I get the cable for Crash 3 and plug it into snare, should be no problem. It works just like a snake. Like I said earlier, the trick is making sure that you're using TRS where it's appropriate and TS where it's appropriate. So that is done. Now I'm going to sit back down and program those sounds again and make sure everything's working appropriately. And then we'll go up and we'll actually do some processing at the channel strips. All right, well, here we are. Everything is done. I got the brain programmed, and I got everything patched through and kind of EQ'd a little bit in the house. It's a little tough today because I'm here by myself, but later in the week, I'll get together with these guys and have somebody playing while I'm working on it at front of house. So we'll iron all that out. But before you go, I wanted to give you guys the after of what this sounds like with an eDrum kit when you get a little more control over what you have by using individual outputs. So here we go. All right, folks, well, there you have it. Alesis Strike Pro eDrum system, individual outputs going into the GX4816 backstage, getting sent over Cat5 up here to the SQ7 at front of house. We got to tweak a little bit on this thing today and really get it to begin sounding good. I won't know until I'm editing this what those sounds that you guys got direct through the USB recording is, or what that sounds like, but I can tell you already it's better than what we were getting before. Later in the week, I'll have an opportunity to come back in and actually have somebody sit and play while I work on them at front of house and get them really tuned in nicely. Something that I'm considering doing in the future with this kit is upgrading to some custom samples. If you're familiar with Rylan Russell's channel, he recently did this with their strike system that they're currently having to use while they're out of their worship center. And it sounds phenomenal for an eDrum kit. So we're thinking about doing that in the future, but if we do, I'll let you know. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this kind of content, please like, share, subscribe if you haven't already, and help us get this information out to those that need it. That's all we're trying to do here is share the problems and the issues that we've had and dealt with and faced and the solutions that we've come up with for them. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you guys real soon.